Tick tock, the clock is ticking on Diddy because on Friday he finds out what his sentence is going to be. But today he found out what prosecutors would like that sentence to be, and it is vastly different from what his attorneys have suggested to the judge. Prosecutors want him to do 11 years, just over 11.
The final and perhaps most telling piece of this entire puzzle is silence. Since the trailer dropped, neither Justin nor Christian Combs has publicly addressed the lawsuits tied to their names. There's been no statement, no denial, no effort to confront the accusations head-on, just silence. And in situations like this, silence doesn't signal confidence. It signals vulnerability. The Combs family may be presenting a united front, but the fractures are becoming impossible to ignore. The real question now isn't whether this documentary will succeed in reshaping public perception. It's whether the family will even make it to the premiere without another scandal erupting. If history is any guide, the odds aren't in their favor. In Sean Combs' world, the past is never fully buried. It doesn't fade quietly into the background. It waits. It resurfaces. It detonates. His sons are now standing directly on that fault line, trying to manage a legacy that's become more explosive with time. This attempt to rewrite the narrative isn't just desperate, it's familiar. Sean Combs has leaned on this strategy before. When pressure mounts, introduce a new project, a comeback, a distraction. Flood the media space and hope the noise drowns out the accusations. But the difference now is structural. The cracks aren't cosmetic anymore. They run through the foundation. Industry insiders who've worked with the family for years say this has always been the playbook. When the heat becomes unbearable, change the subject. Shift the focus. Reframe the story. The problem is that this time, it isn't working. The lawsuits remain. The industry isn't rallying. And the public has stopped waiting for explanations. The trailer may show Justin and Christian reacting solemnly to trial footage, but the material that never makes it into promotional edits tells a different story. One of panic. Of reaction rather than control. Of a family repeating the same pattern that brought them to this point. The distractions are losing their power. And when that happens, the truth doesn't need help finding daylight. Because in the end, this documentary doesn't feel like a fresh chapter. It feels like the echo of an old one, louder, more desperate, and far more dangerous.
Footage ended up going to 50 Cent and his production company, and it's kind of the centerpiece.
Sold to them.
Yes, was the centerpiece of the documentary. So watch this particular scene because this is where a lot of people feel Diddy really screwed over someone that he should be very, very thankful for.
Christian Combs' actions in the days leading up to the documentary announcement only added fuel to an already raging fire. Just hours after 50 Cent's Netflix expose surged to #1, Christian quietly deleted a public threat aimed directly at his father's longtime rival. The post, which referenced violence, vanished without explanation, a digital retreat that spoke louder than the words ever did. That Netflix series, built largely on footage captured before Sean Combs' arrest, painted a damning picture, a man unraveling under the weight of his own secrets. What made the footage especially unsettling was its origin. According to multiple reports, Sean Combs himself had commissioned much of it. Cameras rolling during moments of stress, paranoia, and confrontation, documentation that now feels eerily prophetic. When the footage surfaced publicly, his camp labeled it stolen, despite the fact that it came from his own archives. That contradiction sits at the heart of the current narrative war. The Combs brothers documentary promises truth and transparency, but their own legal filings suggest something far murkier. This isn't a story of distance from their father's actions, it's one of proximity. Critics have begun to ask whether the phrase, "the apple doesn't fall far from the tree," applies here, not metaphorically, but structurally. The patterns, the defensiveness, the instinct to control the narrative rather than confront it, all of it feels familiar. There's also a question no one involved seems eager to answer. If this project is truly about justice, why align its release with the most precarious moment in their father's legal battle? The documentary is slated to drop in 2026, the same year Sean Combs' final appeal could collapse. That overlap feels intentional, not coincidental. Because the footage that hasn't aired yet, the kind that doesn't get polished for streaming platforms, still exists. And the public has already seen how damaging a fraction of it can be. When the trailer for the Combs brothers documentary hit the internet, the reaction wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. A collective sense that this wasn't a rescue operation, but a last-ditch performance. The kind staged when options are running out. Zeus Network's official statement claims the project exists to humanize Sean Combs while he serves his 50-month sentence in a New Jersey federal facility. But the precision of the rollout, the calculated framing, and the conspicuous silence from their legal teams tell a different story. The timing alone raises red flags. The documentary was announced in late December 2025, mere weeks after 50 Cent's Netflix series Sean Combs. The Reckoning exploded onto the platform. That series amassed 22 million views in its first 6 days, fueled by never-before-seen footage of Combs inside a New York hotel room, visibly spiraling as his attorneys warned him the walls were closing in. Viewers weren't just watching history, they were watching collapse in real time. And now, his sons appear to be walking the same tightrope. The trailer shows Justin and Christian seated in a screening room, watching clips from their father's trial. Their expressions are carefully curated, defiance layered over something heavier. Something closer to resignation. The voiceover promises honesty, but the visuals betray exhaustion. Two men raised in the glow of fame now confronting its shadow. Whispers from inside their circle suggest this documentary wasn't truly their idea. Sources claim the push came from higher up, possibly even from Sean Combs himself, directing strategy from behind bars. If that's true, then this isn't just poor timing. It's a gamble with devastating stakes. Because if the appeal fails, this documentary won't function as redemption. It will stand as a televised eulogy to a fallen empire. And if the appeal succeeds, the questions become even sharper. What kind of man walks free only to discover his sons spent a year reopening wounds, broadcasting his darkest chapters, and monetizing a legacy still bleeding?
Absolutely. My name is Big Homie.cc. Yes. Former celebrity bodyguard, 16 years. I converted my business to protecting women and children, combating human trafficking. Last year, we brought on 17 missing women, 4 children, 3 girls, 1 boy. So yeah.
So this is where the story stands. The Combs family is wagering everything on a documentary that may already be doomed the moment it arrives. The sons are facing lawsuits that echo the most disturbing allegations tied to their father's past. 50 Cent remains in control of key footage and, more importantly, public attention, and there's no indication he's finished using either. The appeal decision is approaching. The documentary release is locked in. And somewhere, someone still has access to the rest of the tapes. That's the real pressure point. Not what we've already seen, but what we haven't. What happens when Sean Combs realizes that the narrative he spent decades curating no longer belongs to him? What happens when the sons understand that their so-called last stand was never really theirs to begin with, but just another move in someone else's long game? And what happens when the footage we haven't seen yet finally surfaces? Because it always does. This isn't just about a documentary anymore. It's about power, control, and who actually gets the final word. The Combs family may believe they're reclaiming the spotlight, but the spotlight has a way of exposing more than it protects. Now the only real question left is this: who's actually running the show? And what's still waiting to be revealed?
Everybody will be at his parties. Everybody. And like the first part of the party is normal. It's like going down on Woodville. It's normal. But the second part, when they come out collecting the cell phones, and one of the security guys, sign right here.
The trailer for the Combs brothers documentary ends on a single, haunting note: a prison phone call. Sean Combs' voice emerges from the silence, sharp and unmistakable, cutting through the screen like a blade. It's meant to be powerful. A reminder that, even behind bars, he still commands attention. Still has presence. Still matters. But there's an unspoken question lurking beneath that moment, one no one involved seems willing to address. If this documentary is truly about clearing Sean Combs' name, why does it feel less like a defense and more like a farewell? Justin and Christian present the project as an opportunity to finally tell the truth, to correct the record. But the record, as it stands, is already crowded with allegations, lawsuits, and evidence that can't be edited out with clever storytelling. Justin's unresolved lawsuit, Christian's ongoing legal battle, the leaked footage that proved how fragile control really was. None of it points toward redemption. Instead, it suggests urgency, desperation. A family racing against time, aware that public sympathy is evaporating faster than they can manufacture it. This documentary doesn't feel like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. It feels like a final stand on sinking ground. Last stands are dramatic by nature. They're emotional, defiant, cinematic. But history shows they rarely end in victory. They end in exposure. And as the Combs family steps further into the spotlight, the question isn't whether the truth will come out, it's whether this documentary will survive what comes with it.
They never would have prosecuted him if it was just a manic.
They prosecuted him on all these other things, and they did find him guilty of this, so that still counts.
The jurors don't always get it right. We don't have to agree with their decision.
I just don't know because I wasn't sitting in the courtroom. You got to see the witnesses. Why didn't they believe Cassie? Why didn't they believe Jane?
The biggest issue with the Combs brothers documentary isn't what it shows, it's what it carefully avoids. The omissions are so loud they almost function as their own confession. Front and center among those omissions is Justin Combs, the older of the two brothers, who is currently named in a serious lawsuit filed in Los Angeles Superior Court. The case alleges that in 2017, Justin played a direct role in luring a woman to a Beverly Hills mansion under the promise of a legitimate job opportunity. According to the filing, what awaited her was not employment, but a situation she claimed she could not escape. The lawsuit is explicit, detailed, and deeply disturbing. The woman alleges that once inside the mansion, she was held against her will, given substances that left her disoriented and incapacitated, and subsequently assaulted by multiple men. One of those men, she claims, was Sean Combs himself. The filing does not portray Justin as a passive bystander or someone unaware of what was happening. Instead, it describes him as an active participant in a coordinated scheme, one that mirrors, almost eerily, the most serious allegations that have followed his father for years. And yet, none of this exists in the documentary trailer. There is no acknowledgement of the lawsuit, no disclaimer, no suggestion that the brothers themselves are facing legal scrutiny. Viewers are presented with a sanitized narrative, two sons standing by their incarcerated father, fighting what they frame as a misunderstood legacy. The absence is strategic. By excluding these allegations, the documentary creates a false moral contrast, positioning the sons as clean, credible narrators when the reality is far more complicated. That silence becomes even more unsettling when paired with the trailer's final moment, a recorded prison phone call. A collect call from Fort Dix Federal Correctional Institution. Sean Combs' voice cuts through the screen, calm but ominous, carrying an unmistakable sense of authority. It doesn't sound like a man removed from power. It sounds like someone still directing the operation. The question stops being whether he's involved in this project and becomes whether he's the one orchestrating it from behind bars. Christian Combs, the younger brother, brings his own legal shadow into the frame. In April 2024, a woman filed a lawsuit accusing him of assault during a yacht trip in December 2022, a yacht chartered by his father. According to the complaint, Christian allegedly groped her, attempted to coerce her into a sexual encounter, and retaliated by having her fired when she resisted. That case remains ongoing, but the allegations alone are serious enough to reshape how his public behavior is perceived. Which brings us to his now infamous confrontation with 50 Cent. After the release of 50's Netflix series exposing Sean Combs' pre-arrest meltdown, Christian took to social media with a heated post that was deleted almost as quickly as it appeared. In it, he threatened physical violence, writing that if he ever saw 50 Cent, he would slap the F out of him. The tweet lasted less than an hour, but screenshots are forever. 50 Cent's response was swift and devastating. Rather than escalating emotionally, he dismantled Christian with a reminder of power, legacy, and independence. He mocked Christian's reliance on inherited fame, contrasting it with his own repeated financial reinventions. The message was clear. This wasn't a rivalry. It was a hierarchy. And Christian was nowhere near the top of it. That exchange wasn't just internet drama. It was a public exposure of vulnerability. With legal cases looming, a father imprisoned, and public perception turning hostile, Christian's threat read less like loyalty and more like panic. A man running out of leverage, lashing out because silence feels like surrender. Then there's the footage, the most dangerous variable in this entire saga. The backbone of 50 Cent's Netflix series is built on video recorded in the days leading up to Sean Combs' arrest. Clips showing paranoia, agitation, and moments of collapse. Sean's team insists the footage was stolen from an unfinished documentary project. But that defense raises more questions than it answers. Sean Combs has documented his life obsessively for decades. Studios, hotels, boardrooms, private conversations, cameras were always rolling. Not as surveillance, but as insurance. As if he always believed he'd someday need to shape the narrative after the fact. The irony is brutal. This time, he's not the one holding the footage. Official explanations suggest the leak came from a third-party temporary worker, while a documentarian, Michael Oberle, was out of town. But insiders close to the situation say that explanation feels too convenient, too clean. They argue that whoever leaked the footage knew exactly what it was worth and exactly who needed it. Someone with deeper access. Someone still inside the Combs orbit. If that's true, then the real danger isn't what's already been released. It's what hasn't. Because footage like that doesn't exist in isolation. And whoever handed it over once may still be sitting on much more.
Yeah, it's not surprising that they tried to get out in front of this and tried to persuade Netflix not to come forward with it. I think it's an interesting argument because what they're claiming is, Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, has had a long-standing, animosity against Diddy and sort of vice versa. And because he's at the helm, they're arguing this can't be taken seriously. This should sort of be seen as propaganda. And one of the things that Netflix hit back with was, yes, he's the executive producer. He doesn't necessarily have creative control.
What ends up being more revealing than anything shown in the documentary itself is who is missing from it. The absence is loud. When you scan the promotional material, one thing becomes immediately clear. None of the heavy hitters who once revolved around the bad boy empire are anywhere to be found. No superstar artists. No influential producers. No industry power brokers who once benefited from proximity to the Combs name. Not even the usual familiar faces who typically resurface whenever there's an opportunity to align with a legacy brand. That silence isn't accidental. It's intentional distance. The only people publicly amplifying this project are individuals who are either contractually obligated or financially compensated to do so. And even then, the enthusiasm feels forced, hesitant, measured, as if everyone involved understands the risk of being too closely associated with a narrative that could collapse at any moment. According to insiders, the real push behind this documentary didn't originate with the Sons at all. It didn't come from a place of youthful rebellion or a genuine desire to defend their father's name. It came from higher up the chain. From someone who still believes that the Combs name alone is powerful enough to command attention, even if that attention is now rooted more in disbelief than admiration. And that's the problem. Skepticism isn't neutral. It's not curiosity. It's disbelief wearing polite clothes. Once the public crosses that line, once they stop believing altogether, no amount of carefully edited footage, emotional voiceovers, or selective storytelling can bring them back. Trust, once broken at this scale, doesn't regenerate on demand. Then there's the timing, which makes everything feel even more calculated. Not just the appeal timeline, but the broader cultural moment we're living in. Sean Combs built his empire in a different era, one where influence often outran accountability, where charisma could drown out controversy, and where power insulated people from consequences. That era no longer exists. The industry that once shielded him is now the same one tightening the screws. Silence from former allies isn't neutrality. It's self-preservation. What 50 Cent exposed wasn't just Sean Combs. He exposed the system that enabled him for decades. The executives who looked the other way. The culture that prioritized profit over accountability. That's why this documentary doesn't feel like a rebuttal. It feels like a concession. An acknowledgement that the old rules no longer apply. At this point, the Combs name isn't just damaged, it's radioactive. Brands don't want it. Artists don't want it. Executives don't want to be seen anywhere near it. The Sons may believe they're fighting for their father's legacy, but what they're actually doing is illustrating just how far that legacy has already fallen. And looming over all of this is the possibility that the appeal fails. If that happens, Sean Combs isn't just facing more time behind bars. He's facing a future where there's nothing waiting for him on the outside. The industry has moved on. The loyalists have scattered. The spotlight has shifted. His sons, meanwhile, are entangled in legal battles that could define their identities long after their father's story is finished. This documentary may feel like their final opportunity to shape perception, but it's also a massive gamble. Because if the appeal goes the wrong way, this won't be remembered as a comeback attempt. It will be remembered as a eulogy. And eulogies aren't written for people who plan to return. The final and most dangerous variable is the footage that hasn't surfaced yet. Sean Combs didn't just start recording himself before his arrest. He's been documenting his life for decades: meetings, parties, private moments, public triumphs, and quiet collapses. What ended up in 50 Cent's possession was not the full archive. It was a fragment, a preview. And if someone was willing to leak that much, there's nothing stopping the rest from emerging. The Combs family may believe they're on offense with this documentary. In reality, they're bracing for impact. Waiting. Because when the next revelation drops, it won't be something that can be countered with a trailer. It won't be something that can be edited away. It will be a reckoning.
In the moment, it just felt like, what? Like, is this fun for him? Is this a test?
The Combs family has done something no one saw coming. They've transformed their father's prison sentence into a serialized spectacle, packaged as a reality-style documentary. What's being sold as a redemption arc feels, from the very first trailer, more like a confession wrapped in glossy production. For years, the expectation was silence. Most assumed the Sons would keep their heads down, allow time to dull public memory, and let the lawsuits, indictments, and convictions slowly fade into hip-hop mythology. That illusion shattered the moment the trailer surfaced. According to sources familiar with Zeus Network's internal discussions, this documentary was never just about defending their father's legacy. It's a carefully timed maneuver designed to reshape the narrative while the legal dust is still airborne. The ink on Sean Combs' felony conviction hasn't even dried, yet the family is already attempting to reframe history. The timing is surgical. His appeal remains unresolved, hanging in the balance between potential freedom and permanent downfall. This project isn't arriving after closure, it's arriving in the middle of chaos. That timing becomes far more troubling when paired with what's unfolding legally around his sons. Justin Combs is currently named in a Los Angeles Superior Court filing tied to a deeply disturbing allegation. The complaint claims that in 2017, a woman was lured to a Beverly Hills mansion under the guise of a professional opportunity. Instead, she alleges she was held against her will and assaulted by masked individuals. One of those attackers, she claims, was Sean Combs himself. These accusations aren't internet rumors or tabloid whispers, they are active legal claims, documented and unresolved. Against that backdrop, the documentary feels less like a truth-seeking exercise and more like preemptive damage control. By presenting themselves as grieving sons fighting for justice, Justin and Christian Combs appear to be repositioning themselves before the court of public opinion weighs in again. The series frames their father as a misunderstood icon rather than a convicted felon, subtly shifting sympathy toward the family at a moment when scrutiny is intensifying. What makes this move especially risky is how transparent it feels. Viewers aren't just watching a family tell their side of the story, they're watching a strategy unfold in real time. The emotional beats, the confessional tone, the dramatic pacing, all of it feels engineered to soften perception before legal outcomes harden into final judgments. Whether intentional or not, the Combs family has tied their personal narrative directly to an ongoing legal war. And once you do that, there's no clean exit. This isn't a comeback story unfolding after the storm. This is the storm itself, filmed, edited, and released while the lightning is still striking.
Did he? Or didn't he? Well, if he didn't, he's got a lot to explain. Well, apparently what Diddy's done now, which is a very interesting thing, is he's on the offensive of sorts. That's right, Sean Diddy Combs has initiated a $100 million defamation lawsuit.
What began as a supposed comeback has quietly revealed itself as something far more complicated, far more desperate, and far more revealing than anyone expected. The Combs family did not just announce a documentary. They launched a calculated narrative play at the most precarious moment imaginable. A moment when legal appeals are still unresolved, lawsuits are actively moving through the courts, and public trust has already fractured beyond easy repair. What many initially saw as a redemption attempt now looks increasingly like a confession wrapped in branding. The assumption across the industry was that the family would lie low, ride out the headlines, let the convictions, allegations, and lawsuits slowly fade into background noise, becoming just another chapter in hip-hop history. That is usually how these stories end. But instead, the trailer dropped, and with it, the illusion of control cracked wide open. According to sources familiar with the Zeus Network project, this documentary was never just about telling their side of the story. It was about rewriting history in real time, while the ink on felony convictions and civil filings is still fresh. The timing alone raises questions. The project is set to release in 2026, the same year Sean Combs' appeal could either overturn his sentence or permanently seal his legacy. That is not coincidence. That is strategy. The family appears to be positioning the documentary as a parallel court, one where emotion replaces evidence and editing replaces cross-examination. But the problem is that this story doesn't exist in a vacuum, and the legal reality surrounding it is impossible to ignore. Justin Combs, the older son, is currently named in a Los Angeles Superior Court filing that alleges he lured a woman to a Beverly Hills mansion in 2017 under false pretenses, presenting the meeting as a job opportunity. According to the lawsuit, the woman claims she was then held against her will, given substances that left her incapacitated, and assaulted by multiple men, one of whom she identified as Sean Combs. The filing does not portray Justin as a passive bystander. It alleges active participation in a scheme that mirrors the most serious accusations long associated with his father. None of this appears anywhere in the documentary trailer. There is no acknowledgement of the lawsuit, no disclaimer, no indication that the family is addressing the storm already surrounding them. Christian Combs is facing his own legal battle. In April 2024, a woman filed a lawsuit alleging that Christian assaulted her aboard a yacht chartered by his father in December 2022. According to the filing, she claims he groped her, attempted to force an intimate encounter, and then used his influence to have her fired when she resisted. That case remains ongoing. Yet, in the public narrative presented by the documentary, these allegations are absent, replaced instead with carefully framed moments of loyalty, grief, and defiance. That defiance briefly spilled onto social media when Christian posted, then quickly deleted, a threat toward 50 Cent following the release of a Netflix documentary that detailed Sean Combs' pre-arrest behavior. The post lasted less than an hour, but long enough for screenshots to circulate. 50 Cent's response was immediate and brutal, reframing the exchange not as a feud, but as a power imbalance. The moment wasn't about insults. It was about who controls the narrative. And Christian lost that battle before it even began. At the center of this entire saga is footage that Sean Combs himself commissioned. For decades, he documented his life obsessively. Boardrooms, studios, hotel rooms, private moments. He filmed as if he always knew one day he would need proof, leverage, or narrative control. That raises a far more unsettling question. If that footage was released, what else still exists? The documentary trailer ends with a prison phone call. Sean Combs' voice cuts through the silence, sharp and deliberate, meant to remind viewers that he is still present, still relevant, still in control. But instead of reassurance, the moment feels final. Less like a rallying cry and more like a farewell. If this project were truly about clearing his name, why does it feel like closure instead of vindication? The legal system has already spoken once. A jury convicted him. Appeals exist precisely because verdicts can be challenged, but convictions still carry weight. Jurors do not need to be perfect. They need only be convinced beyond reasonable doubt. Whether observers agree with the outcome is secondary to the reality that the ruling stands, at least for now. The documentary does not change that. What heightens the tension is not whether the film succeeds, but what happens if it fails. If the appeal is denied, Sean Combs is not just facing more time in prison. He is facing permanent reputational collapse. A future where his name is no longer associated with influence or innovation, but with cautionary footnotes. His sons, meanwhile, face lawsuits that could define their own identities independently of their father's downfall. Legacy, once inherited, is now liability. Equally telling is who is missing from the documentary's promotional orbit. No major artists. No industry titans. No former allies stepping forward in support. The absence is deafening. In the past, association with the Combs name was an asset. Today, it is a risk. The only voices promoting the project appear to be paid participants, and even their support feels restrained, cautious, carefully worded. This silence reflects a larger cultural shift. Sean Combs rose during an era when influence often outweighed accountability, when charisma could eclipse consequence. That era has ended. The industry that once protected him has recalibrated. And 50 Cent's role in this story is not just that of an antagonist. He exposed not only Combs, but the system that enabled him for decades. That is why this documentary feels less like a rebuttal and more like a reaction. Less like offense and more like defense. The family may believe they are reclaiming control, but control slipped away long before the trailer aired. There is also the matter of timing. The documentary's release aligns almost too perfectly with the appeal process. If the appeal succeeds, the project can be reframed as prophetic. If it fails, it becomes legacy management, a final attempt to shape perception before the doors close for good. Either way, the risk is enormous. Perhaps the most unsettling detail comes from the trailer itself. Justin and Christian are shown watching footage from their father's trial, their expressions a mix of defiance and something closer to fear. But they were not outsiders to that trial. They were present. They heard the testimony. They saw the evidence. So why does the footage seem to affect them now? Unless there is something in that material they were not prepared to see. And then there is the silence. Since the trailer dropped, neither son has publicly addressed the lawsuits against them. No denials. No explanations. No attempts to get ahead of the narrative. In moments like this, silence is not neutrality. It is strategy or surrender. The Combs family appears to believe this documentary is a lifeline. But everything surrounding it suggests otherwise. It looks less like a rescue mission and more like a last stand. And last stands rarely end in victory. Because the real story isn't what's included in the documentary.